pass on our songs and dances, because there's so much protocol embedded within our songs and dances, and if we don't, document it now and create that curriculum, it's a lost opportunity, because we still have elders with us that were raised on King Island, and they carry so much knowledge. And so Fanny Akbik with North Slope Borough School District, she goes, we're doing the same. Let me give you our material. And so it's just like immediate transfer of do and how. And then the Viva Language Project, my mom has been translating from the North Slope into our region's dialects. And that's so powerful and so not like how the Western patent system is, where you don't share any knowledge, you patent it and then you sell it and you make money. But in any way we share our success. Yeah. This is exactly how you do it, you know? Like, let's just give it away. And so that's a really powerful, connection in what we have to reclaim our identity and our languages and our culture.
Responding to and mitigating the various effects of colonization in rural villages can be taxing, but Megan swears by drum dancing to recharge her batteries.
Yeah, you know what, I realized like how powerful dancing is when we just had a really tough day just touring housing in our region, and it's like emotionally tough, when you see just the struggle that our families go through. There's 10 to 16 people living in a home. Mm-hmm. You can carry that heaviness with you, but the most joy and happiness, and I don't want to say stress relief because that's the wrong thing, but what repositioned my whole week this week was dancing with the Teller dance group, and we did all of our common songs and dances, that we kind of know together with Diameters, and they did my Appa song, who's from Teller, and and so it just uplifted me so much. I felt super happy, after a really tough few days, and so that's what the power of our culture is and our identity. It brings so much joy and strength that we could be experiencing the toughest of poverty and third world conditions, but we are still so blessed and rich with where we live and how we live, and how we carry responsibility for each other. We really try to let these lawmakers see that, because if we're going to address some of the toughest challenges before us, they have to understand why culture is so important, and empowerment through culture is the only way we're going to make our communities sustainable, because it's our culture that gives us the relevance to where we live.
I really feel like that culture, it fills in those gaps that some people may not see or understand when they look at an Alaska Native person in rural Alaska living in maybe difficult conditions, is that they don't understand that worldview, that cultural connection, that powerful source of strength, whereas they might just see you as one person living in a house of 15, or and it really fragments people sometimes. The Western worldview is like, however, they might look at someone who's really sick or someone who is struggling with depression, and it's just like one part of that person, you know what I mean? It's not that whole person. You're missing all of these, if you don't understand culture and you don't understand that connection of that person with their culture, you don't see their strength. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like my sister, as a teacher, she sees that in her second graders, because she can nunuk them when they need to be nunuk, but the non-native teacher may not know how to discipline or educate them. And boy, that's why it's so important when we build this next generation. We're doing it in a way because we can see our strengths and we can see our weaknesses from that context. Yeah. And that is such an interesting concept. I saw this presentation, and it was about the indigenous worldview versus the Western worldview, and treating mental health in those two different realms.
Oh, yeah.
And how the Western model is just not going to work for indigenous people, because there's just a different connection that they're not seeing. There's like a definition of wellness in the Western context as being free from sickness, which is kind of like based in a root of a negative thing, whereas wellness for Indigenous people is like from a positive, like warm place instead of the absence of sickness. It's not that. It's like this other. So even just like the definition of wellness in both contexts is totally different and from a totally different lens.
And that, is really important in defining the role of our health corporations. Mm-hmm. I'm really fortunate in our region. We have leaders that take on that responsibility. We have to treat alcoholism and substance abuse, but we're going to do it from a culturally relevant way. Mm-hmm. And identity is part of the healing. Mm-hmm. And we just went through this huge transformation in our hospital because we had doctors who had been in leadership in providing healthcare to our region's residents for decades. And when our tribes started asserting jurisdiction in the healthcare system, they wanted to require doctors to take cultural relevancy training, and they refused, and they actually got fired. Our tribes fired them, and then our poor CEO, who's this awesome Wisconsin lady who's like a cheerleader, her name got dragged through the mud in Nome, and all these non-natives in Nome, and some of them, that were still on this decolonizing journey, didn't see the impact that these healthcare providers had on our region's residents. And like, just for example, my mom, when she would go, she didn't feel like she was being talked to as a human. They would talk to my white dad and say, "Oh, this," and she's like, "I have a master's degree in education. You can talk to me." Yeah. So we're on this journey, and that's what it takes, because I feel like our culture we're so kind to one another. We don't feel comfortable being in a violent or angry space, but how our organizations are inherently organized, after Greek democracy, it takes use that anger to change things when it's not right. And so I'm really proud of our region's leaders because they did that. And these stories about healthcare, they're not being put out on social media. It's just the other side that has a problem with natives being in charge. And, for example, this one, I was at A&B, the Arctic Native Brotherhood Bar in Nome, and this lady she was from Shaktoolik, or one of our communities, and she was pregnant, and we were talking about, like, Native women birthing stories, which is like a whole nother conversation. Like how, like my cousin, she gave birth 6 times, and how she, there's the strength of pushing on a baby. And this lady, her name was Dee, and she said, "I would not have that doctor deliver my baby. I was forcing it out before the Learjet came. Like, you won't be born in Shaktoolik." And she did that out of, like, oh my God, just because she did not like that healthcare provider. And I thought, damn, and if those stories were shared, and once we start sharing, what it means to be respected in the delivery of our healthcare, that's when we're redefining things. And so we're on a really exciting journey, I think, and it's yet to be, we're still marching, so it's yet to be unforeseen. But the cool thing is now they shut down the whole hospital in Inupiaq language, so that all of our providers know how to speak at least some Inupiaq.
The definition of colonization is the process by which a central system of power dominates the surrounding land and its components. Its components, huh? Alaska Native people were forced into foreign systems and told that their ways that worked for them for a bazillion years were not the right ways. And we're still here trying to undo much of the effects of colonization. The effects of colonization in the education system, in art, in social justice, governance, and self-determination. In all areas. Initiating the conversation about the true history of our people is the first step. I leave you with a quote Ayyu mentioned earlier. Our children are just now waking up from the lies, and they're waking up hungry. What are we going to feed them? How about some coffee and quack? Qassataq, Ayyu, and Megan for the willingness to speak on such a complex and nuanced topic, And thank you to our Coffee and Quack individual contributors, Jesse Deemert, Tiffany Creed, Jessica Smith, Shannon Hawkins, Heather Dingman, Emily Kwan, Todd Schenk, Don Dinwoody, Delula Erickson, AK, and my very own mom, Arlene Eklund Glenn. Next episode will be with Warren Jones on Alaska Native philosophy. Cheers, folks. I'm your host, Alice Cunny Glenn, over and out.